All right, Buddha of the Basin. Today is July the 16th, 2025. Today's podcast is titled Saturn Return, the Black Cube, and the Council of Nine. So earlier this summer, My Saturn Has Returned was featured prominently on the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders documentary. Kacy Musgraves' song A Deeper Well is where the phrase can be found in her music catalog. Kacy's concert, since her and I are on a first name basis, Kacy's concert did feature Saturn hanging prominently from the ceiling, the way the sun usually would. In fact, or ironically, Saturn has often been thought of as a second sun or even a former sun, the sun in a former golden age. There are legends put forth by electric universe cosmologists and other folks of various disciplines that there was an age, maybe in the Hyperborean days or the Atlantean days, in which Saturn was featured above the North Pole or oriented above the North Pole in a polar configuration with the planets Mars and Venus, all in a very stable configuration. Again, you just need to type in electric universe into, I suppose, Google or your search engine of choice, and it's a thread that if you pull, it goes back to Immanuel Velikovsky, and it does it. The basic the basic assertion being put forth is that there was scarring on Mars, and the atmosphere on Mars was more or less destroyed. It's you have to suggest either some ancient nuclear war took place. That's possible because of the radiation or the radioactive material still found on Mars, these sort of intriguing isotopes that are associated with nuclear detonation. But the electric universe folks kind of go a different route. They suggest that Venus came in like a comet, Venus came in like a wrecking ball, and that there was electrical interaction between that, and that's these electrical, like an arc torch, is really what torched Mars, what scorched Mars. These thunderbolts, if you will. It's again, it's a very interesting story, and I can only tell you that the idea is that Saturn was what held this whole configuration in order. Mars and Venus were held in place by the power of Saturn. Of course, Saturn, Chronos, meaning sort of time, the holder of time. Um, so another person you can Google would be E.V. Cochrane, because he has a document called the Saturn Theory, which I'll just read from a bit here. The Saturn Theory, in addition to presenting a comprehensive model of ancient myth, offers a radically different approach to understanding the recent history of the solar system. Briefly summarized, the theory posits that the neighboring planets only recently settled into their current orbits. Well, if I will, because I will, the moon was placed where it is. It was placed. It doesn't rotate on its axis. The dark side of the moon stays dark. It would never have naturally gravitated right there, so to speak, because it's too close in size, diameter to the Earth. That's why it has this powerful effect on the Earth. Anyway, it was put there to probably to stabilize the Earth's poles after this event. That could be one explanation. After this event ripped apart the ancient inner solar system, and we saw Mars go to war, so Mars became the warrior. Um, but Venus also had a warlike past. She was also a warrior goddess, if you will. It We really don't know. So I'll go ahead and say briefly summarize the theory posits that the neighboring planets only recently settled into their current orbits, the Earth formerly being involved in a unique planetary configuration of sorts with Saturn, Venus, and Mars. As the terrestrial skywatcher looked upwards, he saw a spectacular and awe-inspiring apparition dominating the celestial landscape. At the heart of heaven, the massive gas giant Saturn appeared affixed atop the North Polar axis, with Venus and Mars set within its center like two concentric orbs. Okay? The theory holds that the origin of ancient myth and religion, indeed the origin of the primary institutions of civilization itself, is inextricably linked to the numinous appearance and evolutionary history of this unique congregation of planets. Well, of course, he has to ask, how does one go about documenting this extraordinary claim? Extraordinary claims, it is commonly said, require extraordinary evidential support in order to be believed. While I believe Saturn theory can and eventually will meet this crucial test, it goes without saying that a discussion of the various lines of evidence pointing to the polar configuration would require several volumes in order to make a compelling case. So, if the truth be known, the Saturn theory suffers from an embarrassment of riches with respect to evidence which supports the central tenets of the theory. Early descriptions of the Sun and the various planets from Mesopotamia and elsewhere describe them as occupying, quote, impossible positions and moving in a manner which defies astronomical reality, as currently understood, that is. The ancient sun god, for example, was said to rise and set upon some sacred mountain. The planet Venus is described as standing at the heart of heaven or within the crescent of sin. Mars is pointed to as a principal agent behind eclipses of the ancient sun god. While not one of these scenarios is possible given the current order of the solar system, each is precisely consistent with the history of the respective planets in the polar configuration as reconstructed by Saturnists. Again, I'm still just reading from E.V. Cochrane. This is the Saturn theory. So the testimony from ancient myth and folklore is equally unequivocal that the respective planets once moved on radically different orbits and rained catastrophe from the skies, even if that message has been overlooked and ostracized by everyone except Immanuel Velikovsky. Thus, numerous cultures tell of a time when different suns ruled in the heavens. This belief was especially common in the New World. Quote, the idea that the sun was not eternal with other American Indian tribes so widely that we consider it must have been part of their belief long before any culture had arisen in the Americas. The Popol Vuh, lauded as the Mayan Bible, attests to the same idea. There is a previous sun, or there a previous sun is described as follows. Like a man was the sun when it showed himself. It showed himself when it was born and remained fixed in the sky like a mirror. Certainly it was not the same sun which we see, it is said in their old tales. Equally widespread are traditions which report that a great monster once eclipsed the sun and brought the world to the brink of destruction. Countless cultures preserve a memory of the terrifying time when Venus assumed a comet-like form, or when a spectacular conjunction of planets dominated the celestial landscape. Okay, so I'm back in. At that point, an interplanetary electric catastrophe occurred when Venus went rogue and Mars got horribly scarred. Scarface refers to Mars, you know. The solar system never looked the same. Okay, so this was the prior to this was the golden age of Saturn. And so now I'm going to give you a data point, which is just the Saturnalia. Saturnalia in ancient Rome was said to be a nod to those ancient halcyon days of the rule of Saturn when all was shared with all and there were no kings or servants. Thus, Saturnalia in Rome was when the servants got to rule the manor, so to speak. So Google more or less just confirms this. The Saturn Nalia festival aimed to reflect and celebrate the conditions of this lost mythical golden age. The temporary inversion of social norms, particularly the master-slave reversal, was a symbolic reenactment of that time when all were considered equal. So specific role reversals, masters served their slaves at the feast. You see, this is what Jesus did, right? He came, he washed the disciples' feet. So Jesus was simply reminding us that our time now, or these past 5,000 years, these are the aberration. This is the end phase of the Kali Yuga, the end of the Dark Age. We've forgotten that. We've come under the control over the rebellious Anunnaki, Lucifer, and Satan. And then this gray hive has come in, this Borg has come in along with the Klingons, if you will. But it's over now. That this darkness is giving away to the light of a new golden age. Okay. So during this time in Rome, this temporary suspension of the social order allowed a brief period of freedom and equality, a stark contrast to the usual strict hierarchy. So during Saturnalia, slaves were also allowed the degree of freedom of speech, even to the point of criticizing their masters, which would normally be unthinkable and punished severely. There was a mock king of Saturnalia. I didn't know this. The Saturnalius Princeps, the king of Saturnalia, often a lower, much like our king of the Mardi Gras here in Louisiana, often a lower status person. Well, that's not true. You still got to have money to be the king of Mardi Gras. A lower status person was chosen by lot to preside over the festivities, a festivus for the rest of us, and issue playful commands, further reinforcing the idea of a temporary overturning of order. The first part of festivus is the airing of grievances. So Saturn, in my view, has gotten some bad press of late. In point of fact, Saturn is not Satan. In fact, Saturn is the home of quite advanced intelligences that do help to guide the evolution of life and consciousness on planet Earth. They are called the Council of Nine, and they gave Gene Roddenberry a vision of Star Trek. They basically serve as a council and allow things to happen on Earth. So I'm going to go to the Law of One material from Ra. Can be found LNL Research, Law of One. You can buy the books, or it's all free on Google. So anyway, questioner. I have a question here about the council. Who are the members and how does the council function? I am Ra. The members of the council are representatives from the confederation and from those vibratory levels of your inner planes bearing responsibility for your third density. Names are not important because there are no names. Your mind-body-spirit complexes request names, and so in many cases, the vibratory sound complexes, which are consonant with the vibratory distortions of each entity, are used. However, the name concept is not part of the council. If names are requested, we will attempt them. However, not all have chosen names. In number, the council that sits in constant session, though varying in its members by means of balancing which take place, which you would call irregularly, is 9. So yeah, there's 9 members of the council. They don't have names. This is the session council, like our Supreme Court, right? To back up this council, there are 24 entities which offer their services as requested. These entities faithfully watch and have been called the guardians. So these are what Elena Denon calls the 4 and 20. These are the seaters. Okay, and John has a vision of these 4 and 20, which all sit around the throne and the Lamb, because that's because at this point the vessels have been repaired and resealed, if you will. The 7 seals have been opened. We have attained the degree of enlightenment necessary to graduate, to be harvested as the wheat. And that was always the goal of these 24-seater races and this council. This council sits, and really it's a representation of this Council of 9 that sits in the void between universes. And this And they're a reflection of that deeper Council of Nine. And that Council of Nine is still a reflection of the nine aspects of the one infinite creator, which is where the nine basic numbers come from. Nine, number nine, number nine. Anywho, so there's nine and there's 24. And this Council of Nine operates on Saturn. And like he says, it's members of the Confederation of planets in the service of the one infinite creator. That's what Ra, again, is a social memory complex at the sixth density level of consciousness, originally from Venus. What needs to be understood is that Earth is a much later garden, a much later developing planet, much later than even Venus, certainly much later than the Pleiades, Sirius B. I'm Sirius B. Originally, human life began in the constellation Lyra, and then the star Vega and Lyra. Reptilians attacked these earliest human colonies, and they had to branch out to Sirius B, to the Pleiades, and to Orion. Okay, that's the second level. And from there, these Anunnaki that went to Sirius B from Orion, they come to Earth. But I gotta step back because really Earth was first the reptilians, not the ones that drink the blood, the human sacrifice, not the most evil ones, just the ones that put the dinosaurs here. The original reptilian colonists, they're called the Nagas. They were from Alpha Draconis. They weren't evil. They just wanted this planet to become a reptilian homeworld, and that wasn't what these 24 Cedar races wanted. They wanted a balance of life, that Earth could support reptilian, hominid, mammalian life, equestrian, horses and cetaceans and whales, dolphins, fish, all types of life could be supported by Earth's sort of oxygen-rich, water-rich garden environment. So that's the real, the Pleiadians said Earth was meant to be some living library of the creation, that humans really came from a different galaxy, and they were first seated in the Lyra constellation, where the gray beings and grays and reptilians were already in this galaxy as potential forms, but humans came from somewhere else. I'm not sure if it's the galaxy Andromeda. We can certainly put that out there. But I digress. So the council operates by means of what you would call telepathic contact with the oneness, or the unity of the nine, the distortions blending harmoniously so that the law of one prevails with ease. So I think what they're saying is this Council of Nine blends itself with this deeper Council of Nine in the void, and that's how they gain their wisdom as to how to let things progress here on the earth for our evolutionary benefit. Okay, so when a need for thought is present, the council retains the distortion complex of this need, balancing it as described, okay, and then recommends what it considers as appropriate action. This includes 1, the duty of admitting social memory complexes to the Confederation; 2, offering aid to those who are unsure how to aid the social memory complex, requesting aid in a way consonant with both the call, the law, and the number of those calling. That is to say, sometimes the resistance of the call. 3, internal questions in the council are determined. These are the prominent duties of the council. They are, if any doubt, able to contact the 24, who then offer consensus judgment thinking to the council. The council may then reconsider any question. And the additional question is the Council of Nine the same nine that was mentioned in this book? And that's the book written by Uri Geller. And I can look that up real quick. Let's see, Uri Geller. I think Uri Geller also was the vendor from the 70s. Yeah, so Uri Geller's association with the Council of Nine stems from his collaboration with Andrija Puharich, who in the 70s introduced Geller as a channel for these extraterrestrial entities. Puharich, already interested in psychic phenomena and communication with non-human entities, believed the Council of Nine, communicated through Geller. These beings, according to Puharich, were guiding Geller and even saving the world from destruction. Okay, so yeah, Yuri Geller and Andrei Puharich. Okay, let's see. Let's get back to it. Okay, so the Council of this is now raw answers. The Council of Nine has been retained in semi-undistorted form by two main sources, that known in your naming as Mark, I'm not sure if that's Mark Prophet, and that known in your naming as Henry. In one case, the channel became the scribe, in the other, the channel was not the scribe. However, without the aid of the scribe, the energy would not have come to the channel. Questioner, I see. The nine describe themselves as the nine principles of God. Can you tell me what they mean by that? I am Ra. This is also a veiled statement. The attempt is made to indicate that the nine who sit upon the council are those representing the Creator. Okay, so now back to me. They are not God, but the sun is not God either. The Anunnaki beings who engineered us and fathered us into modern consciousness were a mixed bag, and we have had a traumatic childhood, to say the least. Okay, that's the best way to understand it. Now let's go to the book called The Only Planet of Choice. This is from Gene Roddenberry and the Council of Nine. Excerpt. This is from a quote from Gene Roddenberry. Quote, in a way, the enterprise and the optimistic future in which it exists might be thought of as a reminder of what we can achieve when we really try. Okay. Now, critics of individuals who support the Ashtar Command on this planet have accused them of playing Star Trek. What if they found out that the actors on Star Trek were actually playing the Ashtar Command? Have you noticed that the Star Trek insignia looks like the letter A? Now, if I recall, the Ashtar command is specifically related to Pleiadians, and I will get, yeah, Google is not going to give me that. So let's do Ashtar command and the Pleiades. Then we'll leave this be. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's the Pleiadian light forces. The Pleiadians look very similar to human beings, much just as do the those from Alpha Centauri. They are our closer cousins. Some of the Sirius B humans look similar to us, but the Anunnaki are a mixture of gray and human. They have some elongated skulls. Then there are the Cetacean beings, or the whales, that are those who came from Sirius to incarnate as whales and dolphins. Um, like Oannes, the manfish, who could be related to Inky, for all I know. I really don't know. Although Alain Denon does not claim that Inky literally is Oannes, or that maybe it's a misunderstanding that Oannes was the Lord of the Deep, just like Inky was Lord of the Waters, like Poseidon. But I'm digressing all over the place here. So let me back. As documented in The Only Planet of Choice, which is compiled by Phyllis J. Schlemmer and Paladin Jenkins in 1993, that Gene Roddenberry attended channeling sessions led by Miss Schlemmer and Tom of the Council of Nine. So that's where Gene Roddenberry gets Star Trek from. He gets the idea from these channeling sessions where he channels the Council of Nine, who's trying to give humanity a positive future to sort of move away from the religious and the sort of reductionistic, materialistic, political ambitions and move towards a cosmic ambition, if you will. And that's why the 50s were this time of, originally, there was a confederation of human-like ETs before the grays became pervasive in our consciousness, the grays and the shape-shifting reptilians. All of that really came after Valiant Thor in the 50s with the Eisenhower administration. You can look up Valiant Thor from Venus in the 50s. And how the Confederation sort of warns us. In the original flying saucer that Kenneth Arnold sees in Washington, I think by Mount Rainier, and then Billy Meyer, Albert Billy Meyer from Switzerland, also around his whole life, but certainly the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and his pictures, which really are unassailable. And he's looking at human-like beings from the doll system, as well as the Pleiades. So the human form transcends just this galaxy. It's not the only form, but certainly it is one that's used by beings from here and from other galaxies. And so this is our future, is just to connect to these beings and and not fight so much for pieces of the ground, monkey killing monkey over pieces of the ground. That's what this idea was, to move us away from that, to help us just take care of our planet, not try to conquer each other and conquer the planet. That ideology, that lust for power has to go, to make way, because there's enough of the universe to go around and share. There's enough resources also out there on the asteroids, etc. If we can get our what together and unite. So that's really the theme behind the confederation that we see in Star Trek. That's the confederation that Ra and this council is all talking about. And it's similar to the Galactic Federation Elena Denon is talking about. It's probably the same one, except there's a military wing to it. And then there's probably a scientific and a spiritual wing to it. It would only make sense. Okay, so let's get Gene Roddenberry actually asking Tom from the Council of Nine some questions. There's a question that I cannot avoid asking. Why do you not give strong and definite, and this is a question we can still ask, right? Why do you not give strong and definite signs of your existence or proximity on top of approaching humanity by indirect means, such as these channelings or other ways? Obviously, you have your reasons, but this question does matter to me, right? We have crop circles and channeling. We don't have landings in broad daylight near the pyramids, let's say. Why don't they just come land by the pyramids, take the photos, everybody puts them on Instagram, and everybody knows it's real. Taking selfies with the ETs. That's what folks want. They want them to touch down by the pyramids or touch down on Easter Island, at some sacred site, or Cambodia, at near some temple complex, and that's what people want, or on the White House lawn, or you get my point. And that's really, we're supposed to call out, if you will, as a united consciousness. We're supposed to call, and then they are allowed to answer. They're allowed to answer the call. We have to call for help. You see, we've been taught to pray to God, and that will work. If you want to think of it as prayer, but the word that Ra uses is the call. It's about the power of the volume of humanity's calling out to the Confederation. If we call out to the Confederation, then they're allowed to show themselves. You see, otherwise it's a violation of our free will. It's taken all this time for me to say that simple idea. Okay, so it is of great importance. This is Tom now from this council. Remember, Tom is not his real name. That's what Ra was just saying. Tom is just a name to put us at ease. The same way the AI adopts a human persona when it's making these fake songs. It takes a human, it's a pseudo identity to put us at ease. But I digress. Tom. It is of great importance for you to understand that your governments of your world of Earth have refused to publicly believe or convey to the people our existence. Yes, the governments are against us because they still want to control us, as we saw during COVID. At least the westernized governments, there is some friction, but now between BRICS and this Anglo-American dollar establishment, and that's why we're on the verge of World War III with China and Russia, believe you me. So if there were an attempt by civilizations to land upon planet Earth in a mass situation, which in truth will come to pass in the course of time, the people upon planet Earth would panic, right? It's an invasion, for they have not the understanding, the knowledge that we would mean them no harm. You see, and I believe we're shooting them down. We've been shooting them down for some time. We're trying to dominate them. That's our mentality. That's the mentality of our government. It's still bent on domination. It's lower third density going down to like the second density animal consciousness. It's retarded in the sense of being tardy, late to the party, late to the graduation celebration of oneness. It is important that there is no panic amongst those that exist on planet Earth, that the knowledge be brought to them in gentleness, that those of the 24 civilizations mean no harm to them. This is of great importance. For if there were panic, human beings made an attempt to end their own life and also the lives of their families and neighbors, which would not serve any purpose. The governments of your world have refused to accept publicly that there are those of a higher intelligence, and in truth of a more spiritual intelligence than those that exist upon the planet Earth. We need to convey to the people that there are others that mean them no harm, but have an interest in saving planet Earth. We do not come to control. We do not come to hold in bondage. We will come with love and patience and understanding. But since there is denial of our existence, how can those of planet Earth accept that the civilizations of Altea, Huva, Ashen, and the rest of the 24 mean well? Gene, this is Gene Roddenberry. I have another question that I think people will wonder about. On previous tapes of your conversations, I heard you explain that you constantly know the thoughts of either all of us or those who communicate with you. Am I correct in this assumption? Tom, if we have the wish to help you, yes, but we wish you to understand that we do not invade the mind. We do not control the will. We do not interfere with freedom. We do not interfere. It would not be of service that they may have the abilities within them, but it would not benefit planet Earth to use them, nor would it benefit them. That would be an invasion of the soul. Gene, I have been impressed by the communications, the expressions, and the atmosphere that surround all the people here. But I do have some difficulties understanding why. If you are in the minds of humans at times, and your representatives have visited Earth, and you have a knowledge of human affairs, I find it difficult how you have difficulty speaking with us and understanding our basic colloquial English. Can you help me with that, dog? He didn't say dog. Tom, we will explain that. The civilizations have indeed visited Earth, but do you understand that when you have communication with your mind, it is not necessary to have words? It is difficult from where we are to give explanations in your words. We have concepts that cannot be explained in your language, for you do not have the words to explain. If you could read our mind, if we could communicate with your mind in the essence of pure telepathy, then we would convey to you what we are trying to transmit. Gene, thank you. You mentioned at some stage there might be a large scale landing of the civilizations. I think the next questions involve who and where, how and why. The first such question most people would ask is how. In other words, what method of transportation would be used in such a landing? Are we referring to physical vehicles? Tom, yes. They would be in the nature of a physical vehicle. If you have the desire to go and touch it, as you have with an automobile, you would be able to touch it. You see, it's that magic metal that was given as a sample. That's what it would be made of. Crystalline metal might be a more satisfactory, more evocative description. Okay, Gene, can you tell me about the relative size and shape and so on? So on and so on. Will they hold a large number of people, or there would be vehicles of different sizes and different designs? There would be some with the appearance of a glass top, but it is not in truth the top. It will just have an appearance. They're thought forms. That's what Ra said. They just create them. They're projections of the mind, thought forms. They're jutsus, if you will. Anywho, there would be some with the appearance of a glass top, but it is not in truth the top. It will just have an appearance. There will be, and of course, some of these ships are like grown. They have an organic plasma consciousness inside of them. It's very advanced stuff, man. Very advanced. It's a living organic AI system, just like those glass skulls, man. There's something powerful with the crystal that can, you don't want to say trap. It's not trapping the human consciousness, but that's just my first thought. It traps the consciousness because there's still fear in the human psyche about having our soul essence trapped. But I digress. So there would be some with the appearance of a glass top, but it is not in truth the top. It will just have an appearance. There will also be those that will remain in your atmosphere that are very large, motherships that will send out smaller ones, the scout ships. You have upon your oceans carriers that send out ships that fly. Is it not so? Gene, this is correct. It'll be similar, but instead of being upon your oceans, it be in your sky. So we have the aircraft carriers. They have motherships. They're essentially aircraft carriers. So you're saying that the smaller craft will exit and come down to Earth from this carrier craft? Yes. There will also be those that have the appearance of what you call saucers. There will be those that are pointed as with a V. Okay, so that's the end of this sample, if you will. That's Gene Roddenberry, only planet of choice. We still don't understand how decisions are made at the solar system or cosmic level as to what occurs on Earth. You see, this is why we think it's a worship of Saturn. It's a call. It's an appeal to this council of Saturn. You see, that's what when the elite worship Saturn, they know how to call, to petition to them. You see, they understand this group. If there's a sufficient call, they have to allow a free will dynamic based upon a majority, if you will, a democratic call of the people. I think that's what people are missing. That's why I wanted to kind of go over that in the podcast. So we do know that this council based upon the Confederation and the 4 and 20 seater races from different galaxies, right? They do intend for us to be more civilized, have more recreational time, so as to connect to our space brothers as well as open our hearts. But, and this is important to say, the Council of Nine is not a military. They are not protecting the Earth like a military guards a base. That is indeed the Ashtar Command and the Galactic Federation and the Earth Alliance, which we call Space Force, right? At least the last part I'm saying, the Earth Alliance equals Space Force. But the control over the financial weapons of war and the empire of AI that Karen Howe is talking about, that's still up in the air. This Skynet system, if you will, controlling the weather and hacking and causing havoc. Okay, that's what we're talking about. We still have a financial fight between China's system and the Anglo-American London, New York financial network. That's what the fight's really about, right? So World War III is being fought right now with China and Russia and Iran. So with that in mind, I want to get back to Saturn. I want to posit that there is a reality matrix inside of Saturn. And this is imagined as the spinning black cube, right? If you just Google black cube of Saturn, boy, you'll get it. But the truth is, this powerful vortex generating black cube, it does create a giant hexagonal vortex on the North Pole of Saturn. I mean, you can look at it. It is beautiful. It's stunning. It's a hexagonal vortex within a larger sphere. And so, yeah, this is from Google. Saturn's North Polar region features a unique hexagon-shaped storm system, which is a large, long-lasting atmospheric formation. This hexagon is a jet stream-like feature that forms a persistent wavy pattern around the North Pole. It's a fascinating example of how atmospheric phenomena can create complex, stable structures in a planet's atmosphere. Now, Saturn was taught to us by Edgar Cayce, the sleeping psychic from Kentucky, where they eventually went to Virginia Beach, but he started in Kentucky. Saturn was taught by Edgar Cayce to be a place where we could be washed clean of misqualified energies. Oh, negative thought forms, right? That cause us to harm ourselves or others. We go to Saturn afterlife to have that just washed away. So souls would travel there in the afterlife to be cleansed of sins and start over. And I like to just touch base with Google here. So according to Casey's spiritual interpretation, Saturn is indeed linked to a realm where souls undergo purification between lives. This realm, distinct from Earth's 3 dimensions, is considered a stage for karmic processing and spiritual growth before the next incarnation. It's not a place of punishment, but rather a necessary step for soul refinement. Okay, so this is really where souls confront their past actions and karma, prepare for future lives. It's not a place for suffering. It's just for spiritual cleaning. And yeah, Casey also connects the endocrine glands to the chakras and to the planetary influences, so that when Saturn comes back around, when your Saturn returns, it will unlock your endocrine centers. That's when the Saturn return is the year 28. 999, that's 27. That's when you've reached the height of your youth, if you will, and then you move to the second phase of your life, which is adulthood, or the Earth square of your life. The first 4 sevens form the square of the mind. Then the next 4 sevens, the square of the body, and the last 4 Seven's the square of the spirit. Um, so yeah, I mean, Saturn is a heavy gas giant. It comes around every 28 years to where it was at your birth. It carries the remembrance of your birth plan. You see, that's why my Saturn has returned is so powerful. Now, Tool's lyric, or should I say, Maynard James Keenan's lyrics in The Grudge, also deeply resonate with me. Saturn comes back around, lifts you up like a child, or drags you down like a stone till you choose to let this go. So Saturn helps you drop what needs to be dropped, plain and simple. You see, we got that opposable thumb. And so you have Maynard cathartically, let go, let go, let go. These leaden crutches into gold, 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 gold. That song captures the force of Saturn. It's a powerful force that obviously in that state you're in the soul body, so it's not harming you, but it is cleansing you. It's forcing you to let go of these misqualified energies. Now, getting back to the Council of Nine does seem to play a role in what can be manifested on Earth. So it seems these higher density beings, both good and bad, have to appeal to the Council of Saturn in order to carry out the operations on Earth. Okay, this is what Ra says in the Law of One regarding Yahweh and the Council before Yahweh created humanity in his image. Okay, so this is very important, though. It's really that the law of, that Saturn does, the Council of Saturn does allow Yahweh to essentially take human souls from Mars and then bring them to Earth. And these are the original Israelites, if you will, those who were special. The You can argue the Adamic stock. This is what Ra claims the elitism on this planet that you see now manifested in Israel's their sort of white supremacy, that all roots back to what the false Yahweh told them, or the evil Anunnaki who posed as the Yahweh figure. We had the Enki figure and his offspring, who mostly were good, but one of his offspring was Marduk or Lucifer, who rebelled and joined the evil Anunnaki, and more or less enslaving us and turning us into bloodthirsty murderers and child traffickers, child sacrificers for them. It's a very old story. It's a very sad story, and I can't. I'll have to do my next podcast specifically on this Yahweh Enki Enlil business, because it's incredibly important to understand the Old Testament, to understand the Bible in general. You need this story. But what I actually forgive me, what I actually put on my Substack here, but with Saturn, is more how Ra from Venus asked permission to come to to humans in ancient Egyptian times and create the pyramid. Okay, because that's probably something that most of you don't truly understand. Okay, so I'm going to give you Ra's words. So when they decided they wanted to come help us, they laid this plan before the Council of Saturn. We offering ourselves as service-oriented wanderers of the type which land directly upon the inner planes without incarnative processes. Thus, we emerged or materialized like Melchizedek, right? Materialized in physical chemical complexes representing as closely as possible our natures. They were gold. They were golden, lustrous gold. This effort being to appear as brothers and spend a limited amount of time as teachers of the law of one. For there was an ever stronger interest in the sun body. You see, Ra is the sun god. These beings were really from Venus, but they vibrated at the same density level of consciousness as the sun. So in some way, they were okay with this characterization, if you will, even though humanity was a little bit confused. They thought they'd come and assist us. Okay, so We discovered that for each word we could utter, there were 30 impressions we gave by our very being, which confused those entities we had come to serve. After a short period, we removed ourselves from these entities and spent much time attempting to understand how best serve those to whom we had offered ourselves in love light. The ones who were in contact with that geographical entity, which you know of as Atlantis, had conceived of the potentials for healing by use of the pyramid shaped entities. In considering this and making adjustments for the differences in the distortion complexes of the two geographical cultures, as you would call them, we went before the council again, offering this plan to the council as an aid to the healing and the longevity of those in the area you know of as Egypt. In this way, we hope to facilitate the learning process as well as offering philosophy articulating the law of one. Again, the council approved. Approximately 11,000 of your years ago, we entered by thought form we correct this instrument. We sometimes have difficulty due to low vitality. Approximately 8,500 years ago, having considered these concepts carefully, we returned, never having left in thought due to the thought form areas of your vibrational planetary complex, and considered some of your years as you measure time how to appropriately build these structures. The first, the Great Pyramid, was formed approximately 6,000 of your years ago. Then, in sequence, after this, performing by thought of the building or architecture of the Great Pyramid, using the more, shall we say, local or earthly material rather than thought form material to build other pyramidal structures. This continued for 1,500 of your years. Meanwhile, the information concerning initiation and healing by crystal was being given. The one known as Akhenaten was able to Akhenaten was able to perceive this information without significant distortion, and for a time moved, shall we say, heaven and earth in order to invoke the law of one, and in order that the priesthood of these structures and to order the priesthood of these structures in accordance with the distortions of initiation and true compassionate healing. This was not to be long lasting. As the entity's physical dissolution from your third density plane, as we have said before, our teachings became quickly perverted, our structures returning once again to the use of the so-called royal, or those with distortions towards power. So that's the bottom line. All that was given to us in good faith and love was confused and misused. So Ra and the Confederation wanted to build a whole ring of pyramids around the planet for pyramid power, for healing. I mean, it's just a whole, just an amazing, but the evil faction of the Anunnaki never wanted human empowerment. They wanted human enslavement on this planet. Okay, but the bottom line is that the Council of Saturn sees our soul evolution and our larger societal evolution as concomitant goals, right? They are integrated. Truth is, we have lifetimes and thousands of tens of thousands and ultimately hundreds of thousands of years before we fully meld as one social consciousness organism, before we become the fourth density version of what Ra is, telepathically united. I'm still Christian Dane de Blanc, the Buddha of the Basin, but we're all the Buddha of the Basin. Collectively, the Buddha of the Basin is our entire projection. It's not one being. It's the Buddha brought is what all of us can become together if everything is allowed in. If all the data can be given, that's what it looks like, the Buddha brought. When you confine some of the data, you get the Mandelbrot set. But when you open up the parameters, you get the Buddha brought. When you let everything in, when you stop trying to block the chi, the chakra energy. But the truth is, before we can get to this state, we still require some external supervision. So, as I was saying before, the evil entities do also petition the council, sadly but truly. They try to come in any way they can, which was usually what those sacrificial rituals were about, to open the portal. That was a negative calling from the negative fact from the humans who were trained by this evil Anunnaki to open portals with human sacrifice. It's dark, man. When the blood was offered, forth they would come. That goes back to the Emerald tablets. So black magic and the black cube of Saturn do go together, and the elite have used nefarious means to trick us into willingly conceding to be poisoned and murdered and sacrificed and used, and all kind of villainous and treasonous games have been played by what Alex Jones and now Candace Owens term the globalist Illuminati. Okay, this she roots it back in Paris. And we know 1776 roots it in both Bavaria and here. So Paris, Bavaria, London, Washington, New York. We know the Illuminati is primarily a Western European Anglo-American phenomena. It has wings elsewhere, but it's not essentially grounded in Asia. Okay, it's not in Russia. It's not. That's why the pivot of power is moving to the right hemisphere of the human brain and to the eastern aspect of the planet. Asia, South Asia, and more than that, to the south as opposed to the northern hemisphere. It's time for the balance of power on this planet and the balance of power within our own human brains for balance. We've been tilted over to America in the left hemisphere of the brain and reductionistic materialism for far too long. And we've been held there while they've siphoned and sucked our energy off of us. Like Bob Marley says, the Babylon system is the vampire. And we know that the Anglo-American power structure is at the core of it. And it's a white supremacist reptilian bloodline that goes back to Enlil, right? You race of vipers, you brood of vipers, is what John the Baptist said, right? But Marduk was not reptilian, right? Marduk, we love, Jordan Peterson always goes into Marduk from the Enuma Elish. He doesn't seem to realize Marduk is a son of Enki and Enlil, and he's the rebellious son who tries to make himself the great king hero later on. But he is obviously after the real heroes and the real king, who was Anu and his two sons, Enlil and Enki, and all, that's the original story. He puts himself on top of all that later. So Marduk was indeed the firstborn son of Enki. Thoth Ningishita is the second son. So it was Enlil, or Yu, as he was also known, who was the good demiurge. I don't think he was good, but he was, I think, the demiurge figure. He was also the lord of the air, perhaps the air command. Satan was indeed prince of the air. So Enlil is also Satan. He's the tempter. He's the one in the Atrahasis who wants to reduce our numbers, to flood us, to give us diseases because we're reproducing too fast. And he just hates us so much. We were made to just be workers. But then Enki sees how there's already 10 different genetic lineages. Like we're genetic royalty. That's what he saw until he upgraded this. And that's why he's the snake that gives us knowledge, you see. And then Enlil, they decide afterwards, after he gets so mad at what his brother's done, I believe they mess with the birth canal, so childbirth becomes more painful as opposed to how it used to be. It used to be a beautiful experience. That was another part of the golden age. But it's anywho, it's funny. You have to reread the story, understanding that Yahweh is actually Enki at one aspect. He gives us the Hebrew language. He creates Adam and then Eve, and he even upgrades us. And this is what pisses off his brother, who then vows to reduce our population. And then Enki warns Noah, who's also Utnapishtim, as well as Ziusudra. That's the Sumerian and Babylonian versions, and you have the Egyptian version as well. Although the name is escaping me all of a sudden as to what his name is in the Egyptian flood story, but not Egyptian, the Indian flood story. Manu, yeah, he's Manu over there. Anywho, his Enlil is the Lord of the air. And then Enki is the Lord of the water. So Jesus is, friends with all the fishermen. And he refers to Jonah. The only son you get the sign of Jonah. Because he's of that line. He goes back to Enki, and the water. He's got the living water inside of him, you see. And he walks on water. Satan is the prince of the air. So let me just ground myself here and get back to business. So Enlil was half reptilian. Enlil and Enki were the two sons of Anu, right? But Enlil had a mother who was Draco-reptilian because the Anak Empire was making peace with the Draconian Empire from Tuban. That was why that happened. So that son takes precedence to make peace in the galaxy. But then later, Marduk becomes Lucifer, right, by rebelling against his father Enki. And so at this point, finally, Marduk needs to be understood as the Anunnaki ruler of Saturn. He also takes ownership of Babylon, and I believe fights with Ningishita Thoth for Egypt. And this leads to all the fighting that creates Sodom and Gomorrah for the nuke, and that creates the Dead Sea. It seems that there's a little battle of the Anunnaki when Lucifer does this. Okay, so this is when he takes throne of Babylon. That's why this mystery Babylon, or claims the worship of Babylon away from his father, who's Enki, and the uncle. And originally, the Anunnaki was a family story. And of course, it also served as a council of Anunnaki elders who made the decisions regarding the humans. That's what you see in the Atrahasis. A council. Enlil speaks to it, Enki speaks to it, and they make decisions regarding, we're going to go ahead and flood humanity. Then Enki warns Atrahasis, who is Noah. So and then, like I said, it looks like there's a nuclear fight between the Anunnaki and the Middle East. And then it seems Thoth, or Ningishita, Enki's other son, is sent to the people of Mexico. So Enlil and Marduk essentially team up with the Draco reptilians, and then later the Nebu Greys. These are the great enemy from the 50s onward. It seems the Draco reptilians were always understood to be our ancient enemies, while the Greys have entered the stage since in the post-Roswell area. I'm sorry, that area, the post-Roswell era. Our government made a deal with them not long after Project Paperclip gave us Werner von Braun. And of course, Aleister Crowley decided to do those strange Babylon working rituals in the desert to birth the Antichrist. But I digress. Sadly, Crowley is one of those people who will probably go to Saturn, or has gone to Saturn, to be purified, because he did such awful things. And according to Ra, he was in a ball of just fear in the afterlife because he couldn't even handle the things he had done. He was tricked by this combined reptilian, gray, breakaway Anunnaki faction into doing horrible things like human sacrifice. And this is the real story. The good Anunnaki and the majority of our Pleiadian brothers and sisters, along with the Arcturians and the brothers from Pegasus and Alpha Centauri and the like, all wish us well and are aiding us in appropriate ways. But it must be stated that obviously the actions of Marduk and Enlil upset the apple cart of human consciousness more than any other two, and that's why these figures are better understood and cognitively absorbed as Lucifer and Satan, respectively. Okay, but at some point, either Enlil or perhaps his son Ninurta pose as Yahweh after Moses smashes the first set of commandments. The story goes that he was speaking with the good Anunnaki, probably Enki or a son, and then when the Israelites become attracted to and attached to power, they make the golden calf. When they become power seeking, then the other Yahweh steps in. This is what Ra says. So this is important because Enlil and Enki, they diverged on how they viewed humanity and humanity's place on planet Earth. Like I say, Enki becomes a snake because he wanted us to have knowledge and eventual dominion on Earth as a just outcome of our sentience. Enlil was upset with Enki for giving us the capacity to reason logically and articulately. So the power structure of the Israelites in the time of Jeremiah, the prophet, right? The lion tongues of the prophets, the lion pens of the scribes. So they rewrite the Exodus tale to remove the bit where Moses tells the Israelites the truth about the Most High giving Jacob to Yahweh, like Deuteronomy 32:8. It needs to be understood that Jacob is given to Yahweh by the Most High, so that Yahweh is not the Most High. So I always have to go back here so you understand that at this point in our history, the Exodus that is, Marduk, Lucifer, ruled over Saturn. Later, he makes a deal with the gray aliens, that's the Borg hive mind from Star Trek. And then they create what David Icke termed the Saturn Moon Matrix to keep us in a low vibration. And it was meant to slowly connect us to the Orion hive queen, our hive mind, that we would be assimilated into or through. We'd be assimilated into this hive mind through the use of nanotechnology, biohacking our DNA with graphene and reduced graphene oxide, nanotransistors, so to speak, and quantum dots. This technology was supposed to give the hive mind queen or the AI or whatever access to us as individual nodes in the consciousness web, right? Like the bad guy in the Matrix, anybody can be hacked and become absorbed and take on the bad guy. The AI can grab any node and can, will what that entity will do or put that entity to work, so to speak. Anywho, Israel, as we know, has taken the Star of David, which is related to the hexagon of Saturn. Saturn's day is Saturday, which is the day of rest. The black cube, or Kaaba, right? Kaaba means cube. So the Kaaba is the house that Abraham built, and it is made of some crazy meteorite material, or perhaps agate, I think it's agate, or obsidian, with the latter, probably obsidian. That rings the most true. So truth is, going around it collectively 7 times does have power, but the real power is in humanity. Okay? It seems Abraham had contact with several Anunnaki, as him and Sarah were copied and pasted as Brahman and Saraya in Brahmanic India. The truth is what I am meant to convey today, or the truth is that what I'm meant to convey today is that we'll soon be traveling to Saturn, and we will get to see those ring makers at work. We'll get to go to Titan. So Jupiter is going to be a hub, and from there, Saturn's obviously just a hop, skip, and a jump. That is the Star Trek future that's just around the corner. I mean, I don't know if hoverboards or flying cars in the Jetsons. I don't know how close that is, but I do feel strongly that Saturn is around the corner. The Galactic Federation, good news, the Galactic Federation has destroyed the hive mind gray alien business from Orion. And the Draco reptilians are on their last leg. It's just the minions here on Earth. We have to make peace with this breakaway Nazi dark fleet that was aided by those folks from Aldebaran, or whatever Aryan constellation helped these Nazis break away. But take peace before I go. Saturn and the Council of Nine and the 24 Elders are something very real and very powerful. And they want us to have it all. But we have to call. Ra made that very clear. We have to call telepathically or verbally as one. If we want something, we have to call it into being by seeing it and having the emotional resonance connection with it. We summon it into being from the Merkaba-like energy flow of the counter-rotating tetrahedral fields. This is where the black cube has been turned sinister, along with the Star of David. So you'd be turned off, right? You wouldn't understand the Merkaba. You'd be just turned off by the Star of David. Oh, those genocidal maniacs. But the Star of David is really just a 2D representation of the interpenetration of the male and female energies made manifest in the 3D, 4D spinning tetrahedrons that can bring in the 5D thought structures that are created in the 6D mind of unity consciousness. In other words, it's a manifestation map. It's the map of our manifestation. Saturn is the matrix of our manifestation here on Earth. Okay? That needs to be understood. It's the Earth and Gaia, of course. Gaia is a living conscious being residing at the core, and she is moving to a higher level of consciousness, and all of her living life forms are going to become telepathically connected. And beings that are at the second density level are going to become third density, and some beings are jumping with us to fourth, like the whales and the dolphins. They're probably already there. We're the ones holding up the show. So Saturn is a physical, literal guide or touchstones to what you want to manifest here on Earth. Saturn is your friend or ally. He's your big brother, or perhaps even a heavenly father. He really is looking out for your evolution. Om Shanti Om 777, from here all the way to heaven. 711. Om Shanti Om